Hi guys, I just wanted to do another little brief overview of just how basic animation works. So I'm going to go over here. This is Animation Desk. I have opened up basically the home page. You can see down there it says home highlighted in gold. Um, and I'm going to add a new sequence to my animation. So I'm going to go over here to this little plus sign, and that's going to ask me what I want to do. And you can bring in files from Sketchbook. You can bring in files from your camera or your photos file folder. If you wanted to import in drawings from another software like Sketchbook, or you can bring in other files and things like that. I can go and create storyboards here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go to a new sequence up at the top, and for the most part, most of the things we're going to be doing for this quarter is going to be new sequence. Okay, when it does that, it gives you the ability to name the sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one practice. And then you have the ability to change the background color. So you can go through these different shades. You can select your own shade. I'm just going to use white. That's the one that's highlighted in the black line there. So when you click on it, it'll highlight it in a black line. And then you have the ability to change the duration, the frames, and the frames per second. That's what FPS stands for. Now, 12 frames per second, or 12 FPS, is basically internet frame rate. Um, so that means 12 frames per second. So if it has 24 frames, this is a 2-second video, basically. And if you look at the duration over there, you can kind of see that. Now, if I hit the plus sign on the duration, you can see it's adding frames. So if we want it to be 3 seconds, it's 36 frames and so forth. Now, how many frames will I tell you to do? I'm not going to really limit you. You can kind of copy me when I do the tutorials, but, adding a few frames more or less really doesn't hurt much. We just, we're going to be doing very quick animations for all these practice things. So I'm just going to keep it as the default number right now, and then just hit start. Okay. And so now here's my blank animation. Now, when you start drawing, basically how this works is this is your stage. So if you pinch with your thumb and your forefinger or your middle finger, just like we did in Sketchbook, you can scale it up and down and rotate it, just like Sketchbook. So that's handy. Basically, each frame and your timeline down here is a separate stage. So you draw your art, okay? So to create animation, we basically would create, like I would draw a circle here on frame 1. Then I would go select frame 2 and draw another circle. And then on frame 3, I would draw another circle. And then on frame 4, and each time I'm moving my circle that I draw. So the one that you're seeing that's gray there is the frame and the stage before that. So it's kind of like showing you sort of like a tracing paper. So you can kind of see underneath what you did. Now each stage gets a single drawing. You don't do all your drawings on the stage, and so when you put all these stages together, it makes animation. So let's say I go to frame 5 and I draw my ball over here um, on frame 5. Well, that's a crappy ball. Let's do a better one. There we go. All right. So let's turn off onion skinning, the light bulb over here, and the toolbar. And we'll hit rewind, and you'll see my ball go from one side of the screen to the other. Now it's going to keep going because I have 24 frames in my movie. Okay. So if I want to scrub this, you basically just hold down and go back and forth. So frame 1, I drew a ball. It has a separate stage. So this up here is a separate stage, piece of paper. Think of it like a separate piece of paper for every frame. Okay. And then it puts them all together when you want to create animation. So that's how this is working. This is traditional, basically, frame-to-frame animation. So frame 2, I put the ball there. Frame 3, I put the ball there. Frame 4, I put the ball there. Frame 5, each stage, remember, is a separate piece of paper. So frame 5 has its own stage, frame 4 has its own stage, frame 3 has its own stage, frame 2 has its own stage, and so forth. They all have their own separate piece of paper. And the way we do animation is we put our drawings, our keyframes, our key poses. Okay. Now, if we wanted to move these around, I could go ahead and hold down on frame 5 and move it over here. Actually, let's move it way over here. Okay. And then I could take frame 4 and put it here, and then take frame 3 and put it there. And then I want to add a blank frame in between all these. So I could go to frame 1, and when I hold down, it gives me these icons. And the one with the plus sign on it allows me to create a blank frame. If I want to delete that, I hit the trash can, and then it asks me to delete it. If I click on the frame and you just tap, and it gives you like the two little boxes that are the second icon, like one box on top of the other, that duplicates the frame with the artwork on it. And then it asks you, well, how do you want to, like, how many of those duplicates do you want? And sometimes we do that to extend the motion so that it looks like it kind of lingers for a minute to create timing, which we'll learn when we do the ball lesson and all the other stuff. So I'm just going to hit, I'm going to hit cancel because I want a blank frame in between there. So I'm going to do a blank frame. All right, so now I have blank frames. So what are these blank frames for? Well, there's no artwork on those blank frames. What I could do is turn back on onion skinning, and I can see the frame before and the frame after. And the reason that it shows you the frame before and the frame after is so that you can do your drawing on the current frame. So now I would put my drawing right here. That would be my in-between ball. So then I go to frame 4, and I can see basically frame 3 and frame 5. They're grayed out. When you put yours on there, it's going to be black and dark. Okay, so the grayed out ones are the frame before and the frame after. Okay, those stages. So think of these all as like transparent sheets of paper that you can see through. Now, a lot of softwares will let you see onion skinning for like endless onion skinning. So you can see like, dozens of frames all at once. This software only lets you see the frame before and the frame after, which isn't ideal, but we can work with that. So frame 6, that's a blank stage. There's nothing there. I created that as a blank frame. So it has a blank stage. So I'm going to draw my circle in between. All right, and then I'm going to go to frame 8. And you can see, basically, I'm seeing frame 7 and frame 9 right there. So I'm going to, on frame 8, which has a blank stage, there's no drawing, I'm going to put a ball. All right, so now let's turn off onion skinning over here and rewind. I'm going to hit play. And now my animation looks a little bit smoother because I've added more frames to it. Now, if I wanted it to pause, for instance, I could go to, let's see, what's the middle one? Like right there, frame 5. All right, so frame 5, I want it to pause for just a few, like a second, split second. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to the icons, and I'm going to add with the two squares, one on top of each other. How about 6 frames? So that's basically going to take the stage and the artwork that's on the stage and copy it. Okay, so I'm going to hit done. So now I've duplicated that stage. Now when I hit rewind and play, it'll linger there for a second and then move on because I've added more frames. So it's going to be visible for longer. And so that's our timing on how we slow things down and how we speed things up. And we'll learn all that when we start doing the bouncy ball and the archer and all the animations that we're going to do. It's one of the first things you have to get the hang of is timing. And then the second principle is basically like that I called squash and stretch, is basically exaggeration of movement and shape so that because the subtleties just don't come through when you do it really subtle, and it never really shows very well in animation. So a long time ago, when they invented all these tricks for animation, the original artist developed a principle called squash and stretch. So that's basically an exaggeration of movement to show the actual whatever physically is going on. All right, anyways, I'm going to hit pause down there at the bottom. So that is your that's how animation basically works in this software. Okay. And then we have different layers over here in case we want to have multiple animations going on at the same time. I could go to like frame 2 and go all the way back to like, let's say frame 1, and I can do a, I don't know, how about a triangle? And then on frame 2, I'm going to turn back on onion skinning. I can do an upside down triangle. And then frame 3, I can do the triangle back up. And then whoops, I skipped frame 4. Frame 4, frame 5, frame 6, frame 7. I'm not seeing another triangle after it because I haven't drawn anything yet, but I'm seeing the one before it. So as I draw frame 7, I can see frame 6 on its separate stage. So remember the stage, this thing here, there's a separate one, completely separate from on each frame down there in the timeline. Okay, and then I go to frame 8, I draw a new triangle, and then frame 9, a new triangle, and then frame 10. All right, and then frame 11, I don't need anything. All right, so then we turn off onion skinning, we rewind, and now I have two animations going off at the same time because I separated them on different layers. Okay, so that's just basically how it works. So when we draw our animations, we draw our keyframes, and then we go back and we in between the drawings. So it's much easier when you're doing an animation to, for like if you were doing a walking man. Let's just go up here to the brush here and make it a little bit thicker. So when we're doing like a pen, all right. So when we're doing like a little man sequence, we would basically have our main frame there. That's the keyframe, and then we'd go over to, I don't know, like let's say frame 19, and then have him do the next major pose. Okay, and then you would go back and you would start drawing the pose after that. Okay, so then you would draw all the in-between poses. Let's have him just do nothing here. I'm not going to have enough frames to really do much here, but we can kind of see. Boing. Okay, and then like we'll go here. Stick guy. So those would be our main poses. I think I need another pose like right here, so I would go and add a blank frame, and then I would draw my in-between pose. Okay, and so then we can scrub it doing. Okay, and then we would have to draw in between those. So how would we do that? Well, we just go add frames. So I would do an in between those two now. Okay, so I would go and add a blank frame there. And then on the blank frame, I'd probably have him exaggerate his movement by crunching down, and then add a new blank frame there, and then have another frame in between there. Okay, and you can see how the animation starts coming together. Now I did an exaggeration. Where's those frames? Okay, here. So he crouches down and then leaps. Okay, now the speed there, I would probably want to put another in between frame. So that's how we basically create animation. I mean, forgive my sloppy, crappy stick drawing, but that's, I mean, we're gonna be really sketchy like that. Not this bad. That's actually really horrible, but that's how we're gonna do it. Okay. These two overviews will kind of give you an idea of how we're going to start working with Animation Desk. And I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye, guys.